An old silverback mountain gorilla stumbled down the rocky slopes, descending toward the plains where he should never have been. His steps were slow and heavy, each movement a struggle against his own exhausted body, and his left arm hung at an odd angle, swollen and rigid, as if something deep inside was profoundly wrong. He had separated from his family 4 days ago, unable to keep up with the steep climbs the others managed effortlessly, and now thirst was forcing him to seek water in the lowlands where the great cats hunted. The 5 lionesses detected him when he was still 200 meters from the water pool. A group of experienced sisters, led by an alpha female with a deep scar crossing her muzzle, the mark of an ancient fight with a wounded buffalo. They knew perfectly well this wasn't natural prey, but a mountain gorilla alone, injured and outside his territory, was an opportunity that didn't come twice in a lifetime. The alpha positioned 2 sisters to the left, 2 to the right, and she herself moved straight ahead. A perfect encirclement executed in absolute silence, paws moving over the stones without making a single sound. The gorilla realized the danger too late. When he finally lifted his head and saw the golden silhouettes approaching from all sides, his options had already disappeared. Behind him, a 10-meter rock wall blocked any escape. Ahead, the water he so desperately needed, but now unreachable. He tried to rise completely, beat his chest with his right arm. The left wouldn't respond. But the sound that emerged was weak, muffled, nothing like the powerful roar of a dominant male in full strength. The lionesses advanced together, coordinated as only predators who have hunted side by side for years can be. The first charge came from the right flank. The smaller lioness, faster, who leaped toward his back. The gorilla spun, tried to strike her with his right fist, but she was too agile and his reflexes, once lethal, were now too slow. She hit him in the healthy shoulder, knocking him down onto the sharp stones. Immediately the others approached, not to attack, not yet, but to surround and exhaust his last reserves of strength. They had developed a tactic over the years. With large and dangerous prey, patience was worth more than aggression. All they had to do was maintain pressure, block any movement, and let exhaustion do the rest of the work. The gorilla tried to get up twice, but each movement left him more exhausted, and his left arm betrayed him with every attempt. Blood trickled from scratches on his back. His breathing was labored and irregular, and in the pupils of the 5 lionesses he could see his own death reflected, patient, imminent, and inevitable. The alpha prepared for the final blow when the stones beneath her paws began to tremble. A deep sound like a freight train approaching echoed through the valley, heavy, rhythmic, determined footsteps. From the other side of the water pool, pushing bushes aside as if they were twigs, a solitary bull elephant emerged from the vegetation. He was a colossal bull, at least 50 years old, yellowed tusks thick as tree trunks, and that expression of deep irritation that only solitary bull elephants develop after decades wandering alone through the savannas. He had come to drink water at his usual spot and found the path obstructed by a group of predators. The elephant didn't hesitate. He lowered his head, spread his ears in a threatening fan, and charged straight at the lionesses, trumpeting once, a sound so loud and deep that the stones seemed to vibrate. The 5 lionesses scattered instantly. The alpha tried to hold her position for a few seconds, growling low, but when the elephant accelerated his pace and his tusks pointed directly at her, even her experienced courage found its limits. She leaped to the side, avoiding being crushed by centimeters, and ran after the others toward the high rocks. The elephant reached the water's edge, glanced briefly at the fallen gorilla, as if assessing whether he posed any threat, decided he didn't, and began drinking calmly, sucking liters and liters of water with his trunk, while his ears moved back and forth, alert to any movement from the lionesses on the slope. He drank for almost 10 minutes, sprayed water over his back to cool himself, and then walked away in the same direction he had come from, stepping heavily and breaking branches without looking back. Silence returned to the valley. The gorilla lay where he had fallen, motionless among the stones, his chest rising and falling in shallow, irregular breaths. One of his hands was stretched toward the water just a few meters away, but he no longer had the strength to drag himself there. The sun began to set, painting the rocks red, and for a moment all of nature seemed to hold its breath as if paying a final tribute to the old warrior of the mountains. I was finishing my evening patrol of the northern sector of the Bwindi Reserve when I spotted something dark among the rocks near the water pool. I stopped the Land Cruiser, grabbed my binoculars and focused on the motionless shape. A mountain gorilla, alone fallen on the stones, a sight that immediately triggered every alarm in my head. In 23 years patrolling this reserve, I've learned that a dead mountain gorilla outside his family group always means the same thing: poachers. I got out of the vehicle, checked that my rifle was loaded, and approached cautiously, already mentally preparing the report I would have to write and the calls I would have to make. Gorilla corpses cannot be left at the scene. They are criminal evidence, and each death diminishes our already critically low population of only 400 individuals in the entire mountain range. I was almost close to him when I saw the index finger of his right hand move slightly. I froze in place, watching carefully, and a few seconds later, I witnessed his chest rise and fall. Slow, but rhythmic. He was alive. I immediately turned on the radio and called Jean-Claude, our chief veterinarian, a Frenchman who had worked with mountain gorillas for 16 years and had already seen impossible cases. I asked him to come with Claudine and all the emergency equipment, and also to bring the transport trailer, because it was evident that this gorilla wouldn't be able to walk on his own. While waiting for the team, I walked carefully around him, trying to assess the injuries. Recent scratches on his back and shoulders showed signs of a fight with predators, probably lionesses, judging by the pattern of the marks. But when I reached his left arm, I stopped. The entire limb was grotesquely swollen, with stretched and shiny skin, and in the bicep, barely visible under the inflamed tissue, I could make out a dark metallic outline, something that shouldn't be there. I took photos from every angle and sent them to Jean-Claude with a message: possible lodged projectile, come prepared for field surgery. It was at that moment that I heard the sound every forest ranger learns to recognize instinctively: the silent brushing of paws on dry stone.
Jean-Claude, where are you?
I turned slowly. On the rocky ridge above us, 5 golden silhouettes watched my every move. The lioness with the scar on her muzzle was right in the center, absolutely motionless, staring at me with that predatory patience that means only one thing: they were waiting. And that's when I made the stupidest mistake of my entire career. I had left the radio on maximum volume during the messages to Jean-Claude, and with all my attention focused on the injured gorilla, I completely lost track of what was happening around me. The 5 lionesses descended from the slope simultaneously, not running, but walking with that deadly confidence that only large predators possess when they know they have the advantage. I ran to the vehicle as fast as I could, heart racing, hearing the sound of paws on stones right behind me. The Land Cruiser was 20 meters away, but never had 20 meters seemed so long. I reached the door, grabbed the rifle, spun and fired into the air. The sound echoed through the rocks like thunder. The lionesses stopped, but didn't flee. They backed off maybe 50 meters and positioned themselves in a semicircle, clearly determined not to give up the gorilla they considered their legitimate prey. For the next 15 minutes, I maintained a tense standoff with the 5 cats, firing warning shots whenever they got too close, constantly reloading, alternating position between the vehicle and the rocks so as not to give them any angle of attack. The gorilla lay motionless behind me, his breathing growing weaker, and I knew that every passing minute was crucial, both to save him and to keep the lionesses at bay. When I finally heard the roar of engines echoing through the valley and saw the red dust cloud approaching along the trail, I felt indescribable relief. Jean-Claude and Claudine arrived in a veterinary pickup, followed by a truck with a trailer specially adapted for gorilla transport. Seeing the vehicles and several people, the lionesses finally retreated into the denser vegetation and this time disappeared completely. Jean-Claude descended to where the gorilla lay, did a quick examination, and immediately understood the gravity of the situation. Claudine prepared a syringe with ketamine, a carefully calculated dose to sedate him without causing respiratory depression, something critical when working with injured gorillas. The injection was applied to the thigh, where the muscle is thickest and absorption most predictable. Then we had to work quickly to get him into the trailer. Mountain gorillas weigh up to 200 kilos, and transporting an animal of this size without proper equipment can cause permanent spinal injuries. We used a reinforced stretcher with Velcro straps, and it took us almost 40 minutes to position him properly and load him into the vehicle. Claudine constantly monitored his vital signs, pulse, breathing, temperature, while Jean-Claude drove slowly along the irregular trail, avoiding bumps that could worsen the injuries. At the rehabilitation center, they began working on him immediately. The surgery to remove the projectile took almost 3 hours. The bullet had lodged deeply in the bicep muscle and was encapsulated by scar tissue, indicating the wound was at least 6 months old. Jean-Claude explained it was probably a shot from a poacher who missed the lethal target but hit the arm, leaving the gorilla with reduced mobility. This explained why he separated from the family group. He could no longer keep up with the rapid vertical movements that gorillas make daily on the steep slopes. Claudine installed an IV with broad-spectrum antibiotics and anti-inflammatories, cleaned all the scratches caused by the Lionesses, and for the first 2 days he remained completely motionless. On the 3rd day he opened his eyes for the first time and accepted some eucalyptus leaves. Just a few, but on his own initiative, and that was our first real sign of hope. While Jean-Claude and Claudine cared for the gorilla, our field team finally solved a case that had been dragging on for months. The projectile in his arm wasn't an isolated incident. We found 6 more wire traps in the northern sector and tracked a group of 3 poachers who had been operating in the region for almost a year. They were arrested 2 weeks later with complete equipment for illegal hunting, including high-powered rifles and military ammunition. Before taking the gorilla back to the mountains, we covered the entire northern sector and removed 16 different traps, mapping each location for future intensified patrols. Through photographic and genetic records, we managed to identify exactly which family group the gorilla belonged to. A family of 11 individuals led by a dominant male called Mugurusi, who inhabited the highest slopes of the central sector. Jean-Claude was direct with me. Physically, the gorilla would recover completely. The surgery had been successful, and he was already regaining movement in his left arm. But he had spent enough time away from the group for his scent to change, and there was the question of hierarchy. Mugurusi might see him as a challenger returning to the territory. If the group didn't accept him back, he would be alone in the mountains, and that would be a death sentence. A solitary gorilla, still recovering from surgery, wouldn't survive 2 weeks in the wild. We took him back 4 weeks later. Jean-Claude wouldn't allow it sooner, insisting the gorilla needed to be completely strong to withstand the physical and emotional stress of the reunion. The trailer climbed slowly up the steep trail toward the central sector, Claudine and I sitting in the cab, both nervous about what was about to happen. We found the family group in a clearing surrounded by giant bamboo at about 3,000 meters altitude. 11 gorillas resting in the shade, with 2 small infants playing while their mothers watched them. We stopped the vehicle 100 meters away and lowered the trailer ramp. The gorilla stood at the edge for almost a full minute, then slowly and carefully descended to the mountain soil. He stopped, raised his head, and breathed deeply the familiar air of the heights. The group noticed him immediately. Mugurusi, a colossal silverback male, rose completely and began beating his chest. A thunderous sound that echoed through the slopes, so loud that the bamboo leaves trembled. 2 other adults joined the display, pounding the ground with their fists and emitting deep warning grunts. The old gorilla remained completely motionless. He didn't back down, didn't respond to the challenges, just stood there looking at the group, breathing heavily. Jean-Claude, Claudine and I froze near the trailer, not making a movement. A full minute passed, then another. Mugurusi didn't attack or move away. He just kept beating his chest. In that sound was all the authority of a dominant male protecting his family from a possible intruder. Then, from behind him, an elderly female slowly advanced across the clearing, moving in a straight line, without hesitation, with a young infant walking beside her. She was clearly one of the oldest females in the group, possibly the longtime companion of the returning gorilla. She stopped right in front of him, raised her right hand, and gently touched his face, a long, careful touch, recognizing. The gorilla closed his eyes and didn't move. The infant, curious and unafraid, extended his small hand and also touched the old one's arm. The same arm that had been injured, now healed. No one else moved. Even Mugurusi stopped beating his chest. Then slowly, He lowered his arms and stepped back. Not a gesture of submission, just the end of the tension. And the whole group began moving toward the old gorilla, touching him with their hands, smelling him, surrounding him from all sides, not aggressively, but as gorillas greet each other after a long separation. Jean-Claude, Claudine and I released the breath we had been holding. The group had accepted him completely, and that meant everything hadn't been in vain. The old gorilla stood in the center of the circle, visibly relaxed for the first time since I found him, and his breathing finally calmed and became regular. He was home. The group began moving up the mountain toward the feeding sites at higher altitudes. The old gorilla followed with them, walking slowly but steadily, testing the movement of his left arm with each step. The elderly female remained by his side, and the infant moved very close to him, sometimes touching him with his hand, as if he had decided that this old warrior would always be nearby from now on. I watched them as they climbed the steep slope, until their dark silhouettes disappeared among the giant bamboos and the mountain mist. Jean-Claude approached and stood beside me. We remained silent for a moment, hearing only the wind in the heights. Then he said it was time to descend. I looked one last time. The bamboos, the mist, the distant peaks, and somewhere up there among the clouds, the old gorilla was walking with his family. Alive, healed, finally home.